Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is our last video for the 2019-2020 school year. Today we're going to talk about distance, midpoint, and Pythagorean theorem. This will help you with geometry next year. These are some key formulas for geometry. The first formula we're going to talk about is the distance formula. The distance formula is used to find the distance between two ordered pairs, x1, y1, and x2, y2. All right, so here is the distance formula. Okay, and this is, and you can see, d equals the square root x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay, so let's try the examples. Find the distance between 2 points on the graph. All right, so here are 2 points on the graph. Let's find them. The first ordered pair is -5, 3. All right, so I'm going to write that over here. My second ordered pair is -2, -3. I'll write that there. -2, -3. Okay, so here are my two ordered pairs, and we are going to plug it into the distance formula. So again, every ordered pair is x1, y1, and x2, y2. x1, y1, x2, y2. Okay, so here we go. x2 minus x1. First of all, don't forget you do need the square root sign. Okay, x2 minus x1 squared. So we got -2 minus -5, which is -2 plus 5 squared, plus y2 minus y1. So -3 minus 3 squared. And this is how you should show your work. Just like this, and then you compute. All right, so -2 plus 5 is 3, and 3 squared is 9. -3 minus 3 is -6. -6 squared is 36. All right, and we get square root of 45. All right, so we got a couple things. We use our handy-dandy calculator here. Okay, square root of 45. Okay, and we get 6.71. All right, well, round to the nearest hundredth. So we get 6.71. Okay, now there will be some problems on the homework where you have to simplify radicals. Remember that? One of the factors must be a perfect square. So in the case of 45, one of the factors is a perfect square. 9 times 5. Cross it out, kick it out. Which one is my perfect square? 9. Square root of 9 is 3. Okay. So if it's a number like that, we're going to simplify the radical and we're going to find it to the nearest hundredth. All right, let's do the next one. Find AB. So again, find AB means the distance between A and B. So this is x1, y1, this is x2 and y2, and let's plug it in. Okay, 3 minus -4, so that's 3 plus 4 squared plus -1 minus 1 squared. Okay, and let's figure it out. What do we have? 7 squared, 49. -2 squared is 4. So that's square root of 53. Now, I can't take the square root of 53. You can't simplify it, so let me just use the calculator, and I get 7.28. Okay, and this is how you show your work. Number 3. x1, y1. x2, y2. All right. (11 minus -7, which means 11 plus 7. And then 3 minus -2, which means 3 plus 2. Okay, and we get, that's 18 squared. 18 squared is 324, and 5 squared is 25. So 324 plus 25 gives me 329. I'm sorry, 349, excuse me. And do that on the calculator. Square root of 349 is 18.68. Again, 349 square root, 18.68. Okay, and there's our distance formula. Okay, next is the midpoint formula. Next is the midpoint formula. Okay, here's my midpoint formula. Okay, and the purpose of the midpoint formula is to find the midpoint between two endpoints, between two ordered pairs, hence midpoint. So, find the midpoint of GH given G and H. So again, every ordered pair is x1, y1, and x2, y2. All right? Now, notice this is an ordered pair. So we're going to do x1 plus x2 over 2. So, 7 plus 9 over 2. And then we're going to do -5 plus -1, or -5 minus 1, same thing, over 2. All right, and let's compute. That's 16 over 2 is 8. -6 over 2 is -3. And here's my answer. Done. Okay, next. This is super simple. x1, y1, x2, y2. We have -7 plus 3 over 2. And then 4 minus 4 over 2. Okay, now the only kicker here, this is -7 plus 3. -7 plus 3 is -4. -4 over 2 is -2. Here, this is 0. 0 over 2, you can't leave it like that. So my final answer is -2 and 0. That is my final answer. You cannot leave it as 0 over 2. Okay? So let's practice a couple problems on the next page. All right, we'll just do a couple problems. Let's find let me write the distance formula. We'll write it in here. So this way we won't do this problem. x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay, so let's do the first one. All right, finding the distance formula. And we get x2 minus x1 squared, so that's 3 plus 4 squared, plus -7 minus 6 squared. Okay, that's 7 squared is 49. That's -13 squared is 169. And from there, that gives me 218. I take the square root of 218, which is, and notice what it says, it does not say, but we're going to round to the nearest hundredth again, 14.76. Okay, we'll do one more problem below. x2 minus x1, so that's 1 plus 1 squared plus y2 minus y1, -1 minus 4 squared. You got to write it out like that, guys. It's just the easiest way to do it. And we get 2 squared is 4, -5 squared is 25. So you get square root of 29, and the square root of 29 is 5.39. All right, let's do the one here. Okay, what are my two ordered pairs? My two ordered pairs here are 2, 7, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, -6, -2. Okay, now, it doesn't matter which ordered pair is first, but I always go to the one on the left, so we got -6, -2, and 2, 7. And that's how I would do my distance formula. x2 minus x1 squared, so that's 2 plus 6 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared, so that's 7 plus 2 squared. All right, so that's 8 squared, 64, that's 9 squared, that's 81. That gives me 64 and 81, 145. And the square root of 145 is, when you do it on the calculator, 12.04. And there's our distance formula. Again, very important in geometry. Geometry teachers will be happy that we're teaching it. And then, next couple problems we'll do will be midpoint. All right? We will do the midpoint. I'll put the midpoint formula in here. x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. All right, let's do a couple problems. Let's do this problem. x1 plus x2 over 2, y1 plus y2 over 2. The only difference here, -5 and -2 is -7 over 2. 16 over 2 is 8. Okay, you can leave it as -7 over 2, or you can put it as -3.5. Next here, -3 plus 3 over 2, -7 minus 5 over 2. That's 0 over 2 is 0, -12 over 2 is -6. And lastly, 2 minus 8 over 2, -6 plus 5 over 2. 2 minus 8 is -6. -6 over 2 is -3. -6 plus 5 is -1. -1, I'm sorry, -1 over 2 is -1/2, or -0.5. Okay, and there we have it. Distance and midpoint. Okay, next is Pythagorean theorem. Okay, next we have Pythagorean theorem. Pythagorean theorem, okay, the purpose of Pythagorean theorem is about triangles, and it's used to find the missing side of a right triangle. A and B are called legs. Side C is called the hypotenuse. Okay, that's always the longest side of the triangle. Right? And we know the formula is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. There's my formula. Okay, so we're going to do a few problems with triangles and with applications. All right, number 1. We're trying to find c. Okay, so we have a squared, so 8 squared plus 13 squared equals c squared. I know it's an x here, but I like to say c. So we have 64 plus 169 equals c squared. 64 and 169 gives me 233. Now, 233 is not your answer, guys, because that's c squared. We want c, so you need to take the square root. So c equals the square root of 233. Now notice what the directions say. Round your answer to the nearest tenth. So the nearest tenth is 15.3. Now here, if you notice, okay, C is here. Okay, C is here. So we have a squared, which it doesn't really matter. Okay, a is 22, so 22 squared is 484. 27 squared is 729, and we don't know C squared. We add them together, 484 and 729, we get 1213. Okay, that's not my answer. I need to take the square root, right? The square root of 1213 okay, you do that on the calculator, you get 34.8. Okay, here we know what we're missing A, we know what B and C are, or we could say we're missing B, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so A squared plus 49 equals 81. That's how you guys have to set it up. That's the easiest way. You subtract 49. A squared equals 81 minus 49 is 32. So now A is the square root of 32. But notice that 32, I can simplify that. I can simplify that as 16 times 2. Cross it out, kick it out of the radical. So A equals 4 radical 2. They're going to ask you that on the homework. So that's your answer, but you can also do it on the calculator because they might ask you on the calculator as well. 32 square root would be 5.7. Why is it 5.7? It's asking to the nearest tenth. So again, if you can simplify, you do so. I'm not asking you to simplify these big numbers. I don't know what they are, but you could certainly simplify the square root of 32. Okay, and then this problem, we have, let's see, A squared, or we'll do, yeah, A squared 19.1. So 19.1 squared is 364.81. We don't know B squared. And C squared 30.5 squared is 930.25. Okay, we subtract 364.81. So B squared equals 565.44. So B equals whatever the square root of 565.44 is, which is 23.8. Now we're going to have some application problems, okay? And the best thing to do here, if you notice in the directions, you have to draw a picture. That is the key. Draw a picture, then solve for the missing side, round your answer to the nearest tenth, okay? A roofer leaned a 16-foot ladder. Now, if you guys think about a ladder, guys, if you stand up a ladder straight, it's going to fall. So a ladder leans. A roofer leans a 16-foot ladder against a house. If the base of the ladder is 5 feet from the house, how far high up the house does the ladder reach? So obviously it's a triangle, okay? It's a right triangle, okay. So to me, guys, this is your ladder, right? A ladder leans, okay? So there's your ladder. And that's 16 feet. If the base of the ladder is 5 feet from the house, so the base of the ladder is 5 feet from the house. Now that doesn't look like 5, but we'll pretend. How high up the house does the ladder reach? How high up the house, that's here, does the ladder reach? So this will be A. And then it's Pythagorean theorem. A squared plus 25 equals 16 squared, that's 256. And there you go. A squared equals 231. Take the square root of 231, which is 15.2. Remember, we're round to nearest 10. And what are we talking about? We're talking about feet. All right. Kurt is building a rectangular deck. All right, a rectangle. If the dimensions of the deck are 10 by 23, 10 by 23, what is the length of the diagonal of the deck? So 10 by 23. Well, we can do 10 by 23. What is the length of the diagonal of the deck? There you go. So we obviously need to know C. All right, so it's a typical Pythagorean theorem. So 10 squared, 100. 23 squared is 529 equals C squared. So that's 629 equals C squared. That's not my answer because that's C squared. I need C. Got to take the square root. Okay, square root of 629 is 25.1. And we're talking feet. All right, last problem. Ashley jogged 3.4 miles east, 5.7 miles south. How far is Ashley from her starting point? Well, never eat soggy waffles, people. Okay, so we need to start and we need to think where east is. Well, where is east? East, if I'm going to start and I'm traveling east, I'm going to travel this way. This is east. That's 3.4. And then I'm going to go 5.7 miles south. How far is Ashley from her starting point? Well, that's what we need to know. So obviously that's C. Okay, so 3.4, square that, that's 11.56. Square that, that's 32.49. Equals C squared. Okay, add them together, 44.05. And then take the square root. Round to the nearest tenth, and we get 6.6. Now, what are we talking about? We're talking about miles. And there are some application problems. Okay. So practice a couple more, and then we should be good. Okay, so a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Let's write that. And let's do a couple of these problems. Okay, find the Pythagorean theorem. So 100 plus 49 equals c squared. That's c squared is 149 equals c squared. So c equals the square root of 149, which is 12.2. Remember, you have to round to the nearest tenth. Okay? So C equals 12.2. Okay, let's try this one here. Notice this is C, so we'll have to find B. So 19 squared is 361 plus B squared equals 441. That's 21 squared. Minus 361. B squared equals 80, and 80. B equals the square root of 80. Well, guess what, guys? I can simplify 80. 80 is 16 times 5. If you do 4 and 20, you have to do it again. Okay? 16, square root of 16 is 4. So you get 4 radical 5. Okay, or if you do it on the calculator, you're going to get 8.9. So you will have 2 answers. Again, your homework will ask you, some will ask you to round, some will ask you to simplify the radical. Okay. Number 3, we're trying to find A here. A squared, 16 squared is 256, 27 squared is 729. You subtract 256. A squared equals 473, and A equals the square root of 473, which is 21.7. Alrighty, we'll skip number 4. We'll go on to the last 3 problems. A 35-foot wire is secured from the top of a flagpole to a stake in the ground. If the stake is 14 feet from the base of the flagpole, how tall is the flagpole? Okay, so a 35-foot wire is secured from the top of the flagpole to a stake in the ground. So that wire is secured. So here's your wire. It's secured from the top of the flagpole to a stake in the ground. So here's your 35-foot. If the stake is 14 feet from the base of the flagpole, so 14 feet from the base of the flagpole, how tall is the flagpole? Here's your flagpole right here. How tall is your flagpole? Okay, so A squared plus 196 equals 35 squared, 1225. Uh, 1029. Take the square root. And again, round your answers to the nearest tenth. Okay, I know that wasn't showing there, so nearest tenth. And we get 32.1. And what are we talking about here? Feet. Okay. The diagonal of a square is 11.3 meters. Okay, it's a square. Okay, that's a square. Now the diagonal is 11.3. So that means that these all have to be the same, right? What's the perimeter? So how would you figure this out? So obviously I have to do the Pythagorean theorem. So this and this have got to be the same, okay? If the diagonal of a square is 11.3 meters, what is the perimeter? So in order to do the Pythagorean theorem, I need to do this squared plus this squared equals 11.3. So A squared plus A squared equals 11.3. Okay, so that's 2A squared, that's A squared and A squared equals 11. Oh, I messed that up. Equals 11.3 squared. You need to square 11.3. Okay, equals 127.63. No, hold on a minute. Oh, I messed that up. You know, I'm going to come back to that. Scratch that one, guys, because I messed that up. Let's go to the last one. Scott is using a 12-foot ramp to help load furniture into the back of a moving truck. If the back of the truck is 3.5 feet from the ground, what is the horizontal distance from where the ramp reaches the ground to the truck? Okay, so he's using a 12-foot ramp to help load the furniture. A ramp is like a ladder. Okay, a 12-foot ramp to help load the furniture to the back of a moving truck. If the back of the truck is 3.5 feet from the ground, okay, the back of the truck, here's your truck, is 3.5 feet from the ground, what is the horizontal distance from where the ramp reaches the ground to the truck? Okay? So we have 3.5 squared is 12.25 plus B squared equals 144. B squared equals 131.75. Take the square root of both. B equals 11.5, and we're talking feet. Okay, let me go back to this problem because I realized that I did it wrong. If the diagonal of a square is 11.3 meters, what is the perimeter? So I have a squared plus b squared equals 11.3 squared, which is 127.69. 7.69. So I get 2a squared equals 127.69, and I have to divide by 2. So I get a squared equals 127.69 divided by 2. So I get a squared equals 63.85. No, 885. And then I have to take the square root of that. 63.85. And I take the square root, which is 8. Does that make sense? All right, I'm not thinking clearly, guys, so we'll just skip that. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about that one. Okay, so there we have it. And that's it. You have an assignment due on the 31st at 11:30.